With the somewhat surprising firing, if you will, of John Fox by the Denver Broncos, all of a sudden you get a surprise, legit, qualified NFL head coaching candidate on the open market that wasn't anticipated to be there. Maybe the Bills regret a little bit going ahead and pulling the trigger on Rex Ryan. And maybe if they would have known John Fox was going to be on the market, maybe they would have waited, maybe they wouldn't have. I've been a little bit surprised during the whole head coaching carousel in this NFL offseason so far, during the playoffs, how slow things have moved and how slowly decisions have been made. And the fact that really Rex Ryan is the only hire to date by the Buffalo Bills has been a little bit shocking and a little bit surprising to me. You look at John Fox, and in a lot of ways, he's an appealing candidate, especially if you're a team that needs a credible, quality head coach, somebody that needs to bring in a coach that can establish a new way of doing things and establish an identity and bring a winning attitude and a winning formula to their organization. Perhaps as much as anybody else, the Chicago Bears definitely need that in abundance. The question, though, is, does John Fox make sense for the Chicago Bears? Kind of depends. I mean, because John Fox brings a lot of positives to the table. And I have to say, if the Chicago Bears hired John Fox, it would be an eye-opener. There's no question about that. Here's a guy with previous NFL head coaching experience. On top of that, he's had success. He's made it twice to the Super Bowl with two different teams. I don't care how you want to spin that or what you want to say about it. At the end of the day, that is very impressive. Rare is the category where a head coach in the NFL can take two different teams to a Super Bowl, two different conferences in two different decades. That's impressive. I don't care what anybody says. And John Fox has that on his resume. Something that no other potential head coaching candidate that's actually being legitimately considered or interviewed has in their corner. In some ways, John Fox, you could definitely argue, is the most qualified and quality candidate that is out there. So it's not a surprise if the Chicago Bears would want to be bringing him in for an interview, and other teams are requesting to interview this guy. They maybe weren't anticipating him being available, and now he is. You're talking about a guy, too, let's not underscore the fact or undersell the fact that he turned around two bad franchises in the Carolina Panthers and the Denver Broncos in relatively short order. I mean, here's a guy that in his first year in 2011 took the Denver Broncos to the divisional round of the playoffs with Tim freaking Tebow. This is a guy that in his second year with Carolina took them to the Super Bowl and came this close to beating those great Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, New England Patriots teams of the early 2000s. Here's a guy that has a legit quality and qualified defensive mind and defensive background, going back to his days as the Giants defensive coordinator, his time in Carolina, his time in Denver. And when you look at the Bears, they're a team that needs to be rebuilt. They're a team that needs to turn around. They're a team that needs somebody legitimate in that head coaching position. They don't need a Mark Trestman. They need somebody that's actually worth the shit. They need somebody that can actually coach at the NFL level and bring that emphasis and that focus to the defensive side of the ball. And that's what a John Fox would bring. And most importantly of all, for the Bears organization, he would represent a statement and a culture change that the Chicago Bears so desperately need. Instead of hiring coordinators like Dave Wanstead and Dick Jauron and Lovie Smith, especially in the case of Jauron and Lovie, coming from kind of middle of the pack or lower defensive units and bringing them in and expecting them to be great when they weren't even great in the jobs that they had before. Here's a guy, or in the other case, bringing in a guy from the CFL that maybe he was in the CFL for the reason, and instead of bringing in somebody legit like Bruce Arians, who had just shown you what he could do with the Colts the previous season, you go to the CFL and out-sleuth yourself and bring in a bum like Mark Trestman. Here's a guy in John Fox, previous NFL head coaching experience. I think the only time ever that the Bears have had an NFL head coach that has had previous NFL head coaching experience, it was Patty Driscoll going back to the fucking 50s. That's the only one. They always go the cheap route in the coaching ranks. They always go that cheap route. And that's part of the problem. It creates a certain culture of mediocrity, of lowered expectations, or if the expectations are high, frankly, unrealistic expectations. Now you bring in a John Fox potentially. He makes a statement. He makes people take note of the Bears organization. This is a legit NFL head coach, a legit guy with a history of turning things around, turning around bad situations in a very short order. And most importantly of all, he does represent a culture change in a Bears organization that so desperately needs just that, and would be a great initial statement by new general manager Ryan Pace, stamping his imprint on the Chicago Bears organization going forward. With that said, though, it's not all puppies and sunshine and roses when it comes to bringing in John Fox, particularly into the Chicago Bears, in my opinion. If we're going out the interest of full disclosure, we could talk about him taking the Panthers and the Broncos to the Super Bowl. But let's be honest, during his time in Carolina, he spent 9 seasons there from 2002 to 2010. The Panthers made the playoffs 3 times. Yes, they had 2 trips to the NFC Championship game and a trip to the Super Bowl. I'll mind you that. But those are 6 other seasons where they didn't make the playoffs at all. So that's 33.33% of the time his team made the playoffs. That's not exactly a great track record of success. When he got there, his teams did something. Yes, I will grant you that, and I will give you that. However, it's still not an overall great track record of success. 3 playoff appearances in 9 seasons. Sound familiar, Bears fans? That's Lovie Smith from 2004 to 2012. The Bears made the playoffs 3 times, 05, 06, and 010 in his 9 seasons. So in some ways, you could argue that John Fox would be somewhat equivalent from an accomplishment standpoint to a Lovie Smith. He basically would be in some ways like a white Lovie Smith. And I thought part of the reason for moving on from the original real Lovie Smith was to change the culture and go in a different direction and be better than that. Well, John Fox's time in Carolina suggests that he was basically the exact same guy. And if you want to point to his Denver Broncos time and the fact that they made the playoffs 4 straight years and got to the divisional round at least every single time, keep this in mind. They didn't win the Super Bowl. Only once did they get past the divisional round. And this is a guy in the past 3 seasons with the Denver Broncos, his teams twice were 1 and done at home in the divisional round. That's with Peyton Manning as the quarterback and an array of weapons on the offensive side of the ball. And defensively, guys like Von Miller, and before that, Champ Bailey. And after that, guys like Aqib Talib and Chris Harris. You bring in DeMarcus Ware and Terrence Knighton. It's not like the talent cupboard was completely bare on either side of the ball. Yet 2 out of the past 3 seasons, the Broncos made it to the divisional round, had a first-round bye, got a home playoff game, and lost at home. If he couldn't get to the Super Bowl more than once, or get to the AFC Championship game at least more than once with Peyton Manning and that cast on offense and that cast on defense, what the hell do you think he's going to be able to do with the Chicago Bears? He couldn't get farther than that with Peyton Manning and these other guys. Say what you want about Peyton, and I have. But it's not like it was just about Peyton. There were other pieces on both sides of the ball. And twice out of 3 seasons, they failed to win in the divisional round. He had a better track record in the playoffs with the Carolina Panthers with Jake Delhomme as his fucking quarterback. Think about that for a second. If he couldn't get it done with the Denver Broncos, what in the bluest of blue fucks makes you think that he's going to get it done with the Chicago Bears? And then also think about this. Is John Fox really going to want a new young quarterback that he's going to have to wait a period of time for at 60 years of age? I don't think he will. That means potentially that Jay Cutler could be around in 2015. Do you want John Fox to be brought in as a head coach knowing that you're still potentially going to be saddled with Jay Cutler as your crappy quarterback for at least another season, if not 2, knowing that all that does is further put the Chicago Bears organization behind the 8 ball? And even if he was able to come in and turn this team around and maybe get them to the playoffs by the 2nd or 3rd season, would it be a turnaround that would be the right turnaround? This Chicago Bears organization is in a terrible way after years of terrible drafting through many different regimes. Now you sit there and you bring him in. Are you going to try and overcompensate in free agency? Are you going to try and do this, spend a bunch of money that maybe shouldn't be spent? And then you get to the playoffs in 2 or 3 years, but you're not really a championship contending team. Your whole goal was just to get to the playoffs. And then what the hell do you do? And then 3 years down the road, you realize, oh, we still got to rebuild this freaking thing from the top down and the bottom up. I'm not sure that bringing John Fox in signifies a move to me, where the Bears understand just how bad of a situation they are, just how bad of a spot they've put themselves in, and just how much of a complete and total rebuild that they need to engage in. And furthermore, at this stage of his career, is John Fox really that guy? You could cite the turnarounds with the Panthers and the Broncos, sure. But is he in that stage at this moment? And is he going to want to be a part of that process? And ultimately, to me, with all of the experience and the 7 playoff appearances during his coaching career, 3 with the Panthers and 4 straight years with the Denver Broncos, he's won 0 Super Bowls. He's made it to 2 Super Bowls, lost both of them. Several times I felt like his teams have fallen short in part because of his conservative nature, and I think he's held his teams back. The Super Bowl is the ultimate goal, not the playoffs. To me, if you're hiring John Fox, you're hiring John Fox because you want to get to the playoffs. And while that in theory seems like the right thing to do and seems to be the right type of philosophy, it's not. The playoffs are a step in the process on the path to the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal for every organization is to figure out how to build themselves into a Super Bowl championship team. And to me, bringing in John Fox suggests that your concern is getting into the playoffs and not potentially winning a Super Bowl. So what's going to happen? You bring in a John Fox, 2-3 years. He's got the team winning 10, maybe 11 games. They make it to the second round of the playoffs, and they bow out. They've stuck with Cutler. He plays just a little bit better than the crap he did in 2014, but still shows that he's not a franchise guy, isn't the guy. Now you've wasted 2 or 3 more years with him as a quarterback. You've sat there and spent a bunch of money in free agency and haven't emphasized the draft nearly as much as you need to do. And then 3 years later after that, you're sitting there and you're like, yeah, this team has holes all over the place. They're about to lose this guy and that guy and that guy and that guy because they're old and washed up. John Fox might be done. And now the Bears are looking at completely and totally rebuilding again. It might seem like John Fox is the answer for the Chicago Bears, especially in the minds of many in the Bears media, who frankly thought Mark Trestman was the answer, no doubt about it, because Phil Emery was the second coming of Jesus Christ as a general manager, the future prototype of general manager. And so many Bears fans who frankly just want to believe that a John Fox would be the answer. I caution you this, buyer beware. Short term, it might make some sense. But long term, John Fox, to me, frankly, would just be another Lovie Smith. And if he didn't win a championship with Lovie Smith the first time, what makes you think that you would do so again?